Good morning, and welcome to another episode of More Money with me, your host, Al Moore, owner, CEO, and financial advisor of Al Moore Financial. And I'm so happy to be here with your bright and shining faces once again for our April installment of More Money. And this is especially nuanced episode because April is actually Financial Literacy Awareness Month. And even though every month out of the year should be Financial Literacy Awareness Month, want to make sure that you're taking advantage of all the material and all the content a lot of these companies and sites are putting out for Financial Literacy Awareness Month. I know my page is on Facebook, Almore Financial, kind of deep diving into some topics. And so I just take this time around the spring cleaning time to kind of spring clean your finances. Just take a 15 and 30 minutes or so to kind of Google some terms, some things you've been thinking about on the financial side that you haven't done. Just kind of start familiarizing yourself with those terms. There's a lot of things going on in the economy right now, so just familiarizing yourself with those, and the brain will forever kind of work on repetition. So the more it sees something, the more it tries to start grasping that concept. So don't feel too bad if you see something once or twice and you kind of forget it or you can't quite understand it. The brain has to see things over and over to learn. And so take this month, all month, to just take advantage of a lot of the content that some of these sites and content creators on the internet are making. So with that, I want to get right into our first segment, the Since We Last Spoke segment, in particular, just because I hate to use the cliche term hot topic, but it's been a bit of a hot topic. I've been getting a lot of questions and emails and comments just about, hey, Al, what's going on with the dollar? I've heard that the dollar is crashing, like the US dollar is no good. Like, oh my God, what should we do? The sky's falling. What is going on with the US dollar? So I'm going to give you all a summary of it in very layman's terms. I'm not going to dive too deep at all, but just give you a summary of where that narrative, keep in mind, I'm saying where that narrative is coming from. So let's educate ourselves very briefly. Oh, about a month ago, Russia and China, they did an oil deal with each other. And I think Saudi Arabia was a part, was in some talks with getting oil from Russia too. Now, this comes after, months of sanctions that the U.S. has had against Russia, with all the tensions going on in Ukraine. And so this is why, to my faithful viewers watching this show, I try to give you guys a little. If you don't learn anything from me, I want you to learn about getting to the source of a narrative when it comes to things about the economy and with money. Um, the internet is a place where things happen very quickly. You get blurbs in 10 words or less. You get videos in 15 seconds or less because people's attention span is short. So people in marketing and advertising have actually done the research to say, hey, we need to get somebody to click a button, click a like, click a share, click a follow within 30 seconds. What language can we use to grab their attention to basically get them to another place to either subscribe to something or sell something? And so a lot of times it's not necessarily that you're being necessarily given bad information, just aren't getting all of the information. So what I would tell you all, just like I would tell my clients, is whenever you have questions about news that you're getting in terms of money or the economy, and the narrative seems a little too doom and gloom or way too good to be true, always try to get to the source of the narrative. So the source of the narrative about why the dollar, why the US dollar is crashing and no good comes from this oil deal that Russia and China put together, and also on top of Saudi Arabia. So in essence, in very simple terms, when these deals are done, when a country decides, hey, we're going to buy so many barrels of oil from this company, there's two different countries have different currencies, they say, hey, we're going to select this currency to do this deal. Now, and most times than not, most often, they use something called the petrodollar or the dollar. They say, hey, let's use this currency to do this deal. Now, the petrodollar is, of course, from the US dollar. So the US is one of the major players in oil deals, so much so that they made a special thing called a petrodollar, because most countries, when they import and export oil, the currency that they exchange with one another is the petrodollar. So now keep in mind, the amount of this deal, may have been a couple $100 million. And if you're familiar with oil deals, it's not uncommon for them to be into the hundreds of millions or billions. But to put it in context, the petrodollar, the US dollar, in terms of volume, it sees about $2 trillion a day in volume. So that just means all over the globe, when dollars are traded, about 2 trillion of those dollars, $2 trillion of our exchange are US dollars. That's how often the currency is used. Also, the US dollar is still used in over half of international currency exchanges. So, but because a lot of times when things are politically motivated and countries understand propaganda, they understand, hey, we need to send a message, as you would say. So, and China and Russia knowing exactly what it would do, they've done this deal, made a press release about, oh, they're not using the petrodollar for the deal, because they know that would create a narrative to weaken the US dollar. And so a lot of times when countries play these games with each other, they're like, hey, listen, instead of me physically going after you or trying to corral an army, I will attack your economy. I will get the narrative out there that your dollar is weak, scare your citizens to thinking that your economy is falling. And because of the sanctions that you have on us as Russia, so we're going to partner with China to appear as though we're challenging the stability of the US economy. And so that's just where the narrative comes from, because a lot of people are like, yeah, I've heard that the dollar is falling, but I don't know why. I don't even know what that language means when you say the dollar is crashing. So that's where the narrative comes from. It comes from a single deal being struck between Russia and China and Saudi Arabia about using something other than the petrodollar. Now, am I saying that to say that our economy will always and forever be in the state that it's in now? No, that's not what I'm saying. Technology changes, leadership changes in countries, those things can affect economies. But what I'm saying is, you don't have to brace yourself for this. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and learn that all your dollars are worthless. At the very least, it would be a very long process. We're talking about decades long of bad legislation, of downturns, and a lot would have to happen. So like that, and I had an old Army guy tell me, point to a time in history where the strongest army had the weakest currency, and I kind of got to think about it. I couldn't name it. So that's just kind of a surface way to look at it. You look around the world and see whose army is fit the best, and typically they're in the top areas when you talk about whose currency is worth the most. So that's a simpler way of kind of looking at it. So said it to say, you guys have probably been seeing things about the dollar in the news and online. And also keep in mind, when we talk about narratives, particularly when it comes to your money, when you watch these online shows or these TV shows or these news programs where they're telling you about the doom and gloom of the dollar, look and see what they promote during the commercial break. And I'm willing to bet you that a good number of these places that are telling you about the doom and gloom of the dollar, they're probably trying to sell you some sort of commodity, be it gold, silver, maybe sometimes even cryptocurrency. They might be sponsors of this program or sponsors of this online content. Not all the time, but more often than not. So like I said, it's just something to be vigilant of. You always want to make sure that because what I want you to get into the habit of doing is making non-emotional financial decisions. That means that not seeing something on YouTube or on Facebook or Twitter and calling your advisor and liquidating your portfolio and putting it under your mattress, or seeing something and say, "Oh man, that seems like a great technology. That's a great deal. Let me go and buy 1,000 shares of that." I want you to get used to making non-emotional financial decisions. And a part of making a non-emotional financial decision is when you see news or when you see or hear things going on, to get to the source of the narrative, to figure out, okay, where is this coming from? Where can I learn more about why this person is saying this, or why this company is good, or why this technology is good? And it takes due diligence, but when we're talking about something as important as your money, you have to make time to go and do that research. So don't want to spend too much time on that. Just wanted to answer some questions in mass, because I know a lot of people have been wondering about that, kind of where that comes from, what that means. And of course, I implore you, go to um, the internet or wherever you research your information, and just do some research on petrodollar, oil deals with China and Russia, and you'll get these articles talking about how, and you'll see some that are like, "Oh my God, the sky's falling," but if you scroll through the page, you'll probably see advertisements built in for, "Since this is bad, this is what you should be doing." I want you to get information on both sides. Look at something that's bad and look at something that's good, and normally the truth is kind of right there in the middle. So with that, I hope that answers some questions for you guys. And let's get on to our second segment. Right. So moving on to our second segment, things you need to know. So, as some of you all might have been hearing or reading, some analysts are saying, some are not, that, oh, a recession is looming. Get your household in order. Recession is looming. The interest rates are still up. The Fed is still not thinking of moving interest rates down. They're thinking of doing another hike. And recession is coming. Recession is coming. Prepare yourself. So, in that, let's just talk about four small things you can do to ready yourself for a recession or for an economic downturn, should that come. Firstly, the first thing you want to do is assess your debts. Now, you should be keeping a monthly budget anyway, but sometimes we cannot be as diligent as we should be with that. And so, if you have not been keeping a monthly budget or you haven't been checking it lately, now is a good time to do that. Not just for the month. I want you to look at the totality. Look at the totality of your debts, of the things you owe, and paying particular attention to revolving debt. These are things like credit cards, lines of credit, things that amount changes as you pay them down, unlike a fixed amount like for a car note, or what they call installment loan. It's just the same amount. The payment is the same until the end of the term. Revolving debt refers to things like credit that you can pay off, and the balance goes low, and then you have a zero balance, and you have access to a full amount of credit. Or the more you've spent, the higher your monthly bill is, and when you have a low balance, the lower your bill is. Those are things that we could call revolving debt. And sometimes some people have varying rates on revolving credit accounts. So now would be a great time to check those to see, hey, what has this rate changed at all? Or what is my rate on this card? Is it really, really high? What is this card rate in regards to what rates are now? is it worth doing a consolidation loan and refinancing? Or, am I better off with the rate that I have now as opposed to what the rates are? In most cases, with rates being as high as they are now, a consolidation may not make a lot of sense for you, but it could be a situation where you open the account when your credit was worse than it is now. And so you might actually have a higher rate. If it's a card that you've got 3 years ago or 3 or 4 years ago and you had really bad credit and now you've paid down a lot of debt and you're in a better place, it may be worth looking into a consolidation. A lot of people, they say, oh, interest rates are high, I don't want to consolidate. But something to think about is where you were from a credit and income standpoint, or if your debt to income has improved. Some people, are making twice as much money now as they were making 3 or 4 years ago when they took those cards out. So that's why looking at those rates are important. Yes, borrowing rates aren't favorable right now. But if your situation has dramatically changed in the last 3 or 4 years, it may be worth looking into. So that's one, assessing your debt. The second is portfolio opportunities. Looking at what you're invested in and seeing, hey, am I over allocated in one area? Am I under allocated in one area? We know from historically, and this is not me telling you what to invest, how to invest in. We know from historically, looking at the numbers, that the two sectors that fared decently during recessions or economic downturns are utilities and consumer staples. Kind of regardless to what's going on in the economy, people are going to have to pay their light bill. People are going to have to pay these energy companies, these water companies, these utility companies to keep their utility and their power on, particularly in a down economy where people may be home more. If you're not into those sectors at all, it may be worth looking into, seeing where there may be an entry point for you that makes sense. Also, consumer staples. Those things are like grocery stores, Walmart, Dollar Generals, things that people have to buy. They call it staple because it holds things together. Now you have another sector for consumers. It's just like, luxury brands and things like that. But consumer staples are things that you don't have to be rich to buy. And normally, those companies in that sector fare better than most sectors do during an economic downturn. So just looking for the opportunity, but more so just looking over your portfolio to see, are you allocated good just overall? Are you diversified enough? Because like I said, the strongest portfolios are well diverse. Over time, it's just the numbers and the statistics are there. The better your portfolio diversified over a long term, you generally fare better. The third is just shift focus maybe to dividend income. I'm big on dividend investing. I like finding solid companies that have a history of paying a dividend, whether they be quarterly, semi-annually. Now, those companies may not shoot up in growth a ton. The shares may not increase in value as quickly as some other, value or growth companies, but you're in it for the check that you get just for being an investor. So those dividend income companies are definitely something that I'll look towards to make sure that I have a good allocation in, because even if the market isn't growing as much, if the companies are doing well enough to still be able to pay that dividend during a downturn, that's a pretty solid company. That's something that you want to have in your back pocket for sure. And lastly, just look at companies on discount. There's an area to make money in every economic cycle. There are people that are on the verge, if this recession does take hold, if the economy does turn down, that are primed to make a lot of money. Some people are like, hey, I feel like these companies are going to take temporary losses. I'm going to put options on those so that when those prices do fall, you know, or I think these companies will go up, so I'll put a call on them, or I think these companies are going to go down, I'm going to put a put option on them. And so some make money that way, or it just might be some companies that have an overall good look, but for this particular area, this particular time in the economy, it's just hard for them. So those companies might go on discount. Now, of course, the caveat to this is if you're 5 years or more from retirement. Now, if you're 5 years or close to retirement, your outlook has to be a little different. Now, if you're within that 5 year window to retirement, you should have already probably shifted a sizable chunk to your portfolio to fixed income and should have been kind of coming out of the market to where, 70 to 80% of your portfolio is not necessarily in the market, but you're in bonds, fixed income, you're in things other than very volatile um, market investments. But if you're outside of that 5 to 7 year window for retirement and you got another decade or so to work, and you have a hold on your household um, expenses, this might be some time to say, hey, let me look and see where I can find some opportunity. Some people, and that's two trains of thought on this from some investors. Some investors will tell you in a bad economy, hey, pay all your credit cards off, pay all your loans off, pay extra every month to make sure that you have those down so that in a bad economy, you don't have a payment for your credit card. And I think that's a school of thought. My train of thought is continue to make your minimum payment, but what you would pay extra to the credit card companies to keep them safe, put that in your own savings account and continue to pay. If something you have a really high interest rate on something, you might want to get rid of that. But if it's an interest rate that you can handle, I'm not from the school of thought that where, when the economy is bad, let's make sure all the billion-dollar companies, we get them paid off quickly as possible. I think you make the payment that they're telling you that you owe, and the extra money you might put that aside so you can have some liquidity in your savings if there happens to be anything that you need. And once things start to turn around, you can start back making those extra payments um, to get it paid off. That's just my personal train of thought. Like I said, there are some nuances in terms of what the interest rate may be, but at any rate, I just want you to think about taking care of your household when things are bad and not necessarily paying off debt from these huge companies that, worst case scenario, a lot of them will get bailed out if something happens. So you would have all of your debt paid off and have zero in your savings because you've been taking all of your extra money and giving it to them. That's just in most cases I wouldn't advise that. So that's just something to think about. Things you need to know. So lastly, one of my favorite segments. I read that in a book somewhere. Lately, you guys can't see this, but I've been reading my Kiplinger's. That's a company that put out a lot of books on financial wellness and things like that. They do like a retirement edition annually or semi-annually. And I've just been kind of looking into like some the new information on index annuities. I know a lot of people are swear off annuities, and then you have some who love them. You know, I'm not anti-annuity, and so one of the articles I was reading was just going into some of the index annuities that have been performing well, and index annuities are a thing that people like because they get the benefit of participating to a degree in some of the growth of the market, and when things are down, they don't have to worry about losing anything from their investment. And so just kind of look at some of the new companies coming out with some indexed annuity products. Some of them look really interesting. If you guys are nearing the retirement window, annuities really kind of work best if they mature after you're 59 and a half, just in terms of retirement and preferential tax treatment and all those kinds of things. But so that's just what I've been reading on. Whenever there's volatility in the market, people are always looking for other solutions. And so I've been reading up on my Kiplinger's retirement planning mag, just to kind of get a look at what some other people, some other smart people are doing in terms of finding investment solutions outside of being directly tied into the market. And so, just with that, our time's running up here. I've enjoyed it again. It always goes quicker than we think, and so just continue to be diligent. We want to just practice on making sure that we're not making emotional financial decisions, and that we're always planning 5, 10, 15 years ahead, and doing the small things now that'll pay off for us in the long term. And so, with that, I hope you all continue to enjoy your Financial Literacy Awareness Month in April. Keep tuning in to Al Moore Financial on Instagram and Facebook, as we'll be dropping more content for you guys to learn more as much as possible. Lastly, I've been your host, Al Moore, with More Money, and look forward to seeing you all again next month. Have a good one.